The second I let out my first cry, strange ice-blue narcissus flowers sprouted right out of my infant skin. The whole room was hit with a scent that was both pure and totally eerie. My own father, of all people, decided this was some kind of cursed omen. He tried to slam me against the floor, and if my mother hadn't fought for my life like a boss, I would have been a goner. Ever since I could remember, everyone in the village treated me like a red flag, avoiding me like the plague. I usually spent my time squatting by the river, watching ants, or staring blankly at the weeds in the corner. Then, the marquis's estate rolled up, saying their sickly heir Shen Yan needed a girl with supernatural signs for a ritual, and my ice-blue flowers were apparently the vibe they needed to suppress the bad juju. My mother wiped her tears and shoved me onto the carriage. Just like that, I became the soon-to-be princess of the marquis's estate. On the wedding day, with all the fanfare, the entire capital was waiting to watch the train wreck. They were whispering that a sickly freak and a village idiot were the ultimate chaotic duo. The bridal procession stepped onto the luxe red carpet laid out in front of the estate. I stopped dead in my tracks. Under everyone's shook gazes, I crouched down and flipped up the corner of the heavy carpet. A fat earthworm was doing the most, digging away. My eyes lit up, and I carefully picked it up to tuck into my sleeve. This little snack would definitely make the chickens happy. As soon as I said that out loud, the crowd erupted in laughter. "She's actually lost it," they whispered. "Just a country bumpkin with a cursed aura, classless trash." Being the village idiot, I didn't care that they were dragging me for catching worms on my wedding day. I shoved the worm into my dress, brushed the dirt off my hands, looked at the red veil and ripped it off. The veil hit the floor, revealing a face that wasn't exactly main character beautiful, but had that wild mountain spirit energy. I blinked up at the clouds, totally ignoring the messy drama and gossip around me, just thinking that cloud looked exactly like the bird's nest on the old tree back home. My family side of the procession wished they could have just ghosted the event and disappeared into a hole. Then there was the madam of the estate, my new mother-in-law. Her expensive skincare routine couldn't hide her rage. The bridal chamber was silent, except for the suffocating smell of medicine. And there was Shen Yan lying on the bed, looking pale as a ghost. He kept his eyes shut, breathing so faintly it was giving main character energy gone wrong, like he had zero life left in him. To me, he looked just like that old lightning-struck tree back home, creepy to look at and probably rotting from the inside out. The very first day, Nurse Lu was already cooking up a scheme to make my life hell. Knowing Shen Yan lived on meds, she brought in a bowl of brew laced with extra bitter coptis, and with a snarky passive-aggressive tone, she told me, "Young madam, the hair is so fragile, you'd better feed him this medicine yourself. It's all about showing some sincerity, or so they say." I didn't take it, but leaned in close to sniff. The bitter stench hit me like a truck, way worse than any herb I've ever tasted. I frowned and pointed at the bowl. "It's bitter. If he drinks this, he'll only feel more miserable." "Young madam, bitter medicine cures the sickness. This prescription cost the estate thousands of gold pieces to secure." I didn't even bother giving her the time of day. I carried the bowl straight to the window, where a priceless orchid sat, though its leaves were already yellowing and curling. As Nanny Lu shrieked in horror, I tilted my wrist and dumped the entire bowl into the pot. "The plant is thirsty. This medicine might scare him, but it'll definitely kill the pests in the roots." "You've lost your mind. That's the Marquis's most prized possession." Nanny Lu was shaking with rage and about to snap when a cold, sharp voice echoed from inside. "Let her do as she pleases." I turned around to see Shen Yan's eyes wide open. His gaze was deep like a starless night sky. Nanny Lu shut her mouth instantly, retreating to the side, clearly pressed. This was the first time he'd spoken since our wedding, and it was to defend a clueless bride like me. I stared at his face for a long, awkward beat, and suddenly blurted out, "You look just like that withered locust tree at the edge of my village. You've got even more pests on you than that tree does." The room went dead silent. The servants were literally too scared to breathe. It was total disrespect. But Shen Yan didn't lose his temper. He just let out a light cough, a flash of something unreadable in his eyes before turning back into the room. Late at night, I couldn't sleep. The Marquis's estate bed was way too soft. Lying on it felt like sinking into a swamp. I was so uncomfortable. Give me my solid village sleeping platform any day. I grabbed my blanket, curled up on the floor, and was just drifting off when footsteps jolted me awake. I looked up to see Shen Yan standing by the bed, giving me a look that was honestly so confusing. "Bed's too soft and I'm starving," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Watching me, totally unguarded, he recalled my unhinged behavior, pouring out the medicine, and digging in the dirt all day. A strange, foreign feeling started brewing in his chest. This estate had been dead for over a decade, but ever since I showed up, it's had this chaotic energy no one can figure out. He thought tonight would be the same old drill, suffering through the eternal, agonizing silence until dawn. He never expected his own bride, the idiot of the capital, to be snoring away on his bedroom floor, a totally content little smile playing on her lips. He twitched his sleeve, whispering, "Are you actually a fool, or just playing the long game?" No one answered him, only the steady sound of my breathing filled the room. The memory of me wearing that dusty red bridal veil on my wedding day was still the talk of the marquis's estate, and the madam was looking at me, staring blankly at the sky all day long, with a face that looked progressively more disgusted. She straight up grounded me, forbidding me from stepping a single inch outside the heir's Jing'an courtyard, which was literally suffocating me. The courtyard was filled with rare, expensive flowers that the madam had personally picked for her son to find his inner peace. A peony was in full bloom, its layers of petals giving off major look at how rich I am vibes, and all the servants treated it like it was the Holy Grail. I squatted next to it, tilted my head for a solid minute, and shook my head seriously, muttering, "It's not even that cute and definitely less useful than a head of cabbage." So, while the servants were catching some Z's during their midday break, I sneakily grabbed a small hoe from the corner and went to town on these bougie plants. Thinking to myself, if I rip all these out, I can till the soil and plant some actual vegetables. I yanked out the vibrant peonies first, then cleared out the purple flowers without a second thought. And even those weak-looking orchids in the corner got pulled up by the roots, which I stacked neatly to the side. Who knows, they might be good as firewood later. In just half an hour, the elegant high-class courtyard had been turned into neat rows of rich, nutrient-packed soil. It honestly smelled like prime real estate for gardening. The heir's personal attendant, Marquis, saw the absolute carnage and was shaking so hard he sprinted into the inner chamber. "My lord, it's a disaster. The young mistress, she's uprooted every single flower in the courtyard." I glanced into the room where the heir was leaning against the window, reading a book, and he didn't even twitch an eyebrow, acting like he hadn't heard a thing. Marquis was basically ready to cry, pacing back and forth. Finally, the heir put his book down and gave me a slow, calculated look through the window. I didn't stop working, just kept hoeing, not even bothering to wipe the sweat off my forehead. This hoeing technique I learned back in the village. Every strike was powerful, leaving the soil perfectly aerated and damp. The courtyard was usually way too quiet, like weirdly silent all the time. But now, the rhythmic sound of the hoe hitting the earth actually made the place feel alive. I was thinking, if I plant veggies, I can eat what I grow, and maybe it'll even help the heir's health. He always looked so pale and sickly after all. The heir watched me for a long time, and I could vaguely hear his breathing getting a little smoother. Usually he'd be hacking up a lung with that chronic cough, but for once, it was totally silent. Once he finished speaking, he picked up his book again. But I noticed he hadn't managed to turn a single page in forever. My heart felt lighter. Knowing he wasn't mad at me, I finally felt at ease to tend the garden. In no time, I was sowing the vegetable seeds I'd brought from my maiden home into the soil. Those were my hidden treasures tucked at the bottom of my bag, every single seed plump and perfect. A few days later, I asked the old woman in the backyard to help me find a few chicks. They were all fuzzy golden and chirping non-stop. I wove a small coop in the corner of the courtyard to serve as their little home. Finally, this courtyard actually felt lived in, shaking off that dead, hollow vibe. That day, Shenwanhu from the second branch showed up to visit her cousin, decked out in designer gear, immediately plugging her nose the second she stepped inside with a look of pure disgust. I knew she was just there to clock my struggle. Back in the countryside, people looked at me the same way. She was flaunting a string of glowing pearls on her wrist, bragging about how they were East Sea pearls worth 500 taels of silver. She sashayed over, her voice dripping with shade. "Sister-in-law, what on earth are you busy with?" "Cleaning up manure." I was totally focused on using a small wooden shovel to scoop chicken poop into a bucket. It's top-tier fertilizer. Bury this and the veggies will grow lush and healthy. I finally looked up at her comment, my face already smeared with a bit of dirt. She looked at me with even more disdain. "You're the legitimate crown princess of a noble house, yet here you are shoveling chicken poop. You've completely embarrassed the entire family name." She tried to stomp forward to grab me, but tripped over a small pebble, lunging headfirst toward the ground. That precious East Sea pearl necklace snapped. Pearls went flying everywhere, and the brightest, biggest one hit with a splash, landing perfectly into my bucket of chicken manure right next to me, sinking straight to the bottom. The courtyard went absolutely silent. A second later, Shenwanhu's screech nearly tore the roof off, hopping up and down while wailing. "My pearls." Her maids scrambled to their knees to pick up the pearls, but not a single one of them dared to touch my manure bucket. Everyone looked beyond awkward. Shenwanhu flopped onto the ground, sobbing like it was the end of the world. I actually felt bad for her. After a moment, I leaned in to comfort her. "Don't cry. Chicken manure is great for the soil, and your pearl might just help the plants grow better too." That comment left Shenwanhu completely speechless. before she jumped up, fuming and ready to shove me. But her maid rushed to hold her back, so she could only glare at me with pure hate, finally stomping away with a furious pout and a handful of uncollected pearls, looking like an absolute mess. Shen Yan, inside the room, couldn't hold it back anymore, suddenly turning his head to cough violently, but this time, the sound was way too clear, hiding a trace of laughter he couldn't quite contain. I looked up toward the room, seeing Mosi panicking, while frantically patting the heir's back. After a long while the coughing stopped, and I saw the heir wave Mozi away. His gaze landed on me through the window. I couldn't read his expression, but his face looked a bit redder than usual. A while later, a young servant walked out, carrying snacks and a stool, saying the heir specifically ordered him to bring me food to rest, so I wouldn't burn myself out. I rubbed my stomach. Honestly, I was starving, and sat down to snack. The chicks were chirping and circling my feet, so I tossed them some crumbs, feeling all warm and fuzzy inside. The heir is actually such a gem for not stopping my little garden project, and even feeding me snacks on top of it. From then on, my days were spent hovering over the vegetable patch, praying for sprouts, while the chicks grew up so fast, losing their baby fuzz, and starting to learn how to hunt for worms. Seeing that I was keeping to myself, Mochi stopped playing guard 24/7, only dropping by occasionally to drop off food as ordered, his initial suspicion clearly fading away. The drama hit on a dark night. I was dozing lightly when I heard a muffled, strained coughing fit from the room. At first, I just thought the heir caught a cold, but the coughs turned rapid, mixed with tiny broken-sounding groans, and honestly, it was giving me major emotional damage. I threw on a robe and ran over, only to see Mosi carrying a basin of bloody water out, his face ghostly pale in the lantern light of the courtyard, and the very air reeked of a thick metallic scent. "Young mistress, you need to head back to your room. The heir's old condition is acting up, and the imperial doctor is inside trying to save him." Mochi saw me approaching and scrambled to stop me, his voice dripping with pure anxiety. I stood my ground, refusing to budge. From inside the room, I heard the imperial physician sighing in total defeat. The cold poison in the heir's body has been building up for years, and this flare-up is next-level lethal. These basic tonics ain't doing a thing. The old geezers were basically saying, they're useless. The madam's eyes were bloodshot as she cradled a bowl of pitch-black medicine, trembling as she brought it to Shen Yan's bedside. "Yanner, just one more sip. This is a new prescription from the physicians." Before the bowl could even hit his lips, Shan Yan jerked his head away, coughing so hard it sounded like his lungs were giving out. He literally had no strength left to speak. His brows were knit tight. It was obvious the bitter, vile stench of the medicine was wrecking his already ruined insides. Everyone in the room was spiraling, but they were completely out of options. A random nugget of wisdom from the elders back in my village suddenly clicked. When a plant's roots are dying, drowning it in water just makes it rot. You have to nourish it gently with something refreshing. The here's body is basically that dying root. All those bitter, heavy-duty tonics are just making things worse, not better. I spun around and bolted for the small kitchen. The radish soup I simmered earlier was still warming on the stove. I had tossed in some wild ginseng roots I'd scavenged from the back mountains. It smelled absolutely divine. Back home, everyone said it was the best for restoring your energy. The mansion servant had originally tossed it out like it was literal trash. I'd sneakily fished it out and dried it just in case. When I walked back in with a bowl of light, clear radish soup, the room was still in total chaos. I shoved the maid blocking my path aside, marched straight to the bed, and held the bowl out to Shen Yan. "Young master, drink this. The roots are dried out. They need something refreshing, not another dose of that heavy medicine." Silence hit the room like a truck. Everyone was shook. "Preposterous." The madam slapped my hand away. The soup spilled onto the bedding, and she shrieked, "Are you crazy? What is your twisted agenda here? You really have the audacity to bring this peasant radish soup to Yanner? Are you trying to kill him? Guards! Drag this brainless fool out of my sight and lock her in the woodshed." The servants jumped on the bandwagon, hurling insults and claiming I was trying to murder the heir, all while grabbing at me. Mozi stood to the side, wanting to help but too scared to act, just panicking and glancing at Shen Yan. They had a death grip on my arms, but I refused to let go of the bowl. "This has the good stuff. It's basically a superfood for your body." Shen Yan was slumped against the cushions, his face as pale as a ghost, with dried blood still smeared at the corner of his mouth. He suddenly looked up at me, his gaze deep and unreadable. "Rooter. Drink it." His voice was weak, yet carried an undeniable air of authority. You've lost your mind." The madam couldn't stop him. I watched as Shen Yan struggled to pull himself up, his eyes cutting through the crowd, locking onto the bowl of soup in my hands. His expression was wild, a mix of suspicion, helplessness, and a flicker of trust he probably didn't even realize he was showing. "Give it to me." he reached out. I shoved past the servants and handed him the bowl. His movements were shaky, but he drank every drop slowly, down to the very last bit, leaving no crumbs. Mozi rushed to hand him a handkerchief, and after wiping his mouth, Shenyan let out a sigh. It actually went down easier than his usual medicine. The madam was shaking with rage, but she could only stand there, sighing and playing the victim. I crouched by the bed, checking his complexion, low-key praying for him to bounce back. That night, I kept watch by the chicken coop, in the corner of the courtyard, mentally calculating when the chickens would be big enough to boil into a soup for the young lord. But they were growing so slow. Who knows how long I'd have to wait. Just before dawn, Mozi sprinted over, looking absolutely shook with joy. Young madam, the young lord stopped coughing. He actually slept through the night. I jumped up and sprinted into the room, finding Shenyan leaning against the cushions, his eyes clear and sharp, and while still pale, he didn't look like he was on death's door anymore. The madam was holding his hand, her eyes rimmed with red. When she saw me, she gave me a look complex, for sure, but for once, she didn't pop off at me. Later, I caught Mozi and the servants gossiping, saying the royal physician came by early to check his pulse, and was shook to the core, calling it a miracle that the cold poison in the young lord's system had faded. After some digging, they realized it was all thanks to my radish soup. Little did they know, the secret wasn't the radish, but the wild ginseng roots I'd mistaken for weeds. I just thought the roots smelled nice, so I dug them up and dried them, throwing a few in to make the food taste fresher, never expecting it to actually be a total glow-up for his health. The madam's attitude toward me has slowly started to soften, occasionally even sending maids over with some fabric, but I'm honestly more obsessed with my baby chicks and my vegetable patch. Tell me, if I raise these chickens until they're plump and stew them for the heir, will he recover faster? Mochi was stunned and sighed helplessly, but still answered me seriously. Don't you worry, young madam, I'm sure it'll work. Shenyan, listening to him from inside the room, felt his lips quirk up. The sunlight hitting his face made him look way less icy than usual. Half a month later, the marquis's estate threw a banquet, claiming it was to celebrate Shenyan's health taking a turn for the better. I didn't even want to go. My veggie sprouts just popped up, and I still had to keep an eye on those chicks to make sure they weren't pecking at everything. But the madam came to fetch me herself, and Shenyan gave me a look, so I had to play along and tag along. The banquet was such a drag, crowded and noisy. I couldn't sit still. My head was stuck on that corner of the yard, just praying for this to be over. The second madam brought Shen Wanru to sit across from me, all smiles, but her eyes kept lurking over in my direction. After a few rounds of drinks, the marquis brought up the imperial gifted, white jade guanyin statue, bragging about how it protects the household and brings blessings. The second madam immediately stood up, smiling at the madam. Sister-in-law loves jade so much, let me go get it so you can take a look. Before long, a maid brought out a brocade box, and inside sat the white jade guanyin. Mozi whispered to me, young madam, this jade guanyin is a gift from the emperor. It's usually locked in the vault, and only the marquis and the second master have the keys. The second madam being this proactive today, it's giving Major Sus vibes. The second madam stood up herself, wanting to show the jade guanyin to the madam. As she walked past me with the box, she suddenly let out a dramatic oops, like she tripped on a table leg. She stumbled toward me and deliberately grabbed my arm, using the momentum to accidentally let go of the box. The brocade box slipped from her hands, and the sound of shattering jade echoed through the banquet hall. The white jade guanyin hit the stone floor, and shards flew everywhere. The main part of the statue landed right at my feet. The banquet went dead silent. The marquis' face turned darker than a stormy sky. The second madam collapsed on the floor, clutching her chest and rubbing her arm, sobbing like a victim in front of the madam and the marquis. Marquis, I was walking perfectly fine. Who would have thought the young madam would suddenly grab my arm? I lost my balance and dropped the box. This is an imperial treasure. If the emperor finds out, our entire estate is toast. What are we going to do? She cried while side-eyeing everyone, making sure they saw the red mark on her arm, where she claimed I grabbed her. The whole performance was staged, to make it look like I ruined the treasure, just to spite her. Shen Wanru immediately rushed over to help her up, pointing at me, and joining in on the screaming. That's right, I saw it in 4K. My sister-in-law was the one who grabbed my mother. She clearly wanted that jade guanyin, couldn't get it, and decided to ruin it instead, all while trying to gaslight everyone into blaming my mom. She's just a country bumpkin with a heart as toxic as they come. The relatives barely saw what went down, and seeing the second madam's Oscar-worthy breakdown and that red mark, they started jumping on the hate train. Some were telling the Lord to handle it with family law, others were saying to throw me to the authorities before the whole estate gets dragged into this mess. The servants were literally too shook to breathe. Mozi was sweating bullets, trying to whisper a defense to the Lord. My lord, the young madam hasn't even moved her hands this entire time. Before she could finish, a sharp glare from the lord shut her down. The lord was stressing over the fact that the artifact was a royal gift. And because the second madam is his own sister-in-law, he didn't want to drag the family drama out in public. He just wanted to sweep it under the rug. The madam frowned, looking at me with an awkward girl. What are you doing, vibe? She hesitated, but I didn't panic or try to justify anything. I just kept my eyes locked on the second madam's sleeve. When she fell, I caught a weird bitter scent. It wasn't medicine or food, it was just straight up pungent and off. I stepped forward and pointed at her sleeve, calling her out for the bitter, nasty smell she was radiating. The second madam turned ghost white, instinctively clutching her sleeve while her eyes started darting around in full panic mode. What kind of nonsense are you spewing? That's just my perfume. What bitter smell are you even talking about? You're just trying to frame me. Her reaction was so sketch that the gossip mill actually started to quiet down. Right on cue, footsteps echoed from the doorway, and Mochi shouted in relief, "The heir." I turned around, and Shen Yan was walking in slow-mo, no support, no nothing, just strolling in under his own power. He was rocking a white silk robe, glowing with health, eyes sharp as ever, no sign of that fragile sick boy energy he had before. "Yanner, why are you here? You just recovered, hurry and sit down," the madam said, clearly stressed. Seeing him, the second madam's face drained. "Young master, why would you do this?" Shen Yan didn't even spare her a glance, his eyes scanning the shattered pieces of the jade guanyin all over the floor, then locking on to me before he spoke clearly and authoritatively. "The imperial gift was damaged, and the marquis's estate will take full responsibility for the loss. But if anyone thinks they can use this to frame the crown princess, I'll be the first one to shut that down. Any objections?" His voice wasn't loud, but it radiated major main character energy. The banquet went dead silent. Nobody dared to utter a single word. "Yanner, are you aware that this was an imperial gift?" the marquis asked, his voice low and threatening. Shen Yan bowed slightly, his tone calm but firm. "I am aware, but compared to some gift, rooting out the snakes hiding in this estate is far more important." Everyone looked at each other, totally lost and confused by his motive. I saw the second madam's absolute panic, remembered that bitter scent, and suddenly it all clicked. I lunged forward and snatched the fragrant sachet from her waist. That bitter smell was definitely coming from that thing. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, trying to grab it back, but the sachet hit the floor. The seams burst open, spilling red powder and dried flower petals everywhere. It was definitely saffron, just like I saw back home, along with the same powder that caused that bitter smell on her. Moshi's face went pale as he knelt to inspect it. "This is oleander powder. Young master, this is poison." The second madam collapsed to the ground, shaking uncontrollably, unable to come up with a decent lie. "It's not mine. This isn't mine. Someone is framing me." Shen Yan slowly stepped forward, picked up the bag of powder, and glared at the second madam with pure ice in his eyes. "Saffron to increase blood flow, oleander to kill. Aunt, I've been bedridden for years, and it turns out this was all thanks to your diligent care?" I was stunned, turning to look at Shen Yan, who reached out and grabbed my hand. My hand was still dirty from gardening earlier, but he held it tight, his voice incredibly sincere. He isn't stupid. Her intuition is sharper than anyone's. She is the savior of my life." He paused, his gaze sweeping over everyone in the room. 3 years ago, I clocked that my medicine was laced, so I low-key investigated and found I'd been poisoned with chronic cold toxin. I spent that time faking a sickness, partly to gaslight the culprit into thinking they'd won so they'd finally expose themselves, and partly to trace the source of the poison and find their little squad. He turned to look at me, his gaze softening just a little. The wild aphrodisiac in Ahi's radish soup didn't just accidentally soothe my cold toxin, it totally freaked out the second branch. They saw my health doing a complete glow-up, and fearing their years of plotting were about to be caught in 4K, they panicked and rushed to set up the Jade Guanyin poisoning scheme, trying to frame Ahi to get her out of the way. All to snatch control of the Marcus's estate management and the water transport business. This was the exact moment I'd been waiting for to close the trap. The second madam looked ghost white, unable to spit out a single excuse. Shen Wanru was shook, hiding in the corner without making a peep. Everyone was absolutely stunned, losing their minds over this plot twist. Even the Marchioness looked cold and stone-faced, pointing at the second madam for a long time, too shocked to even speak, before ordering the second madam locked away and putting the entire second branch under investigation. "I never imagined you'd go this far to help your second son in the fight for royal succession, trying to delete Yan like that." The drama wrapped up, and no one dared to look down on this country, bumpkin crown prince consort anymore. Even the Marchioness started looking at me with genuine soft vibes. Shen Yan's health was getting better by the day, He even started carrying small buckets of water to help me water the garden. He was still on the skinny side, but he finally had some color in his cheeks, and that gloomy aura between his brows had totally faded. Dressed in white silk robes, he squatted by the field, looking all clumsy but super serious. I rushed over to snatch the bucket out of his hands. "You shouldn't be doing this heavy lifting. Let me handle it." Shen Yan held onto my hand, his eyes sparkling with a smile. "It's fine. I want to do it with you. Your veggies are way more interesting than any calligraphy in the study. You're a natural at watering. The plants are gonna love it." Mochi stood nearby, staring in disbelief, probably never thought he'd see the crown prince doing manual labor like this in his life. A few days later, my cabbage patch was thriving and lush. The leaves were so thick and juicy, they looked ready to pop, and the bok choy and radishes were looking way fresher than anything you'd buy at the market. The servants who used to clown me for spreading chicken manure and playing in the dirt were now lining up, begging me for some veggies. The first one was old lady Zhang from the kitchen, giving me a shy, awkward look. "Young madam, the veggies you grow look so good. Could this old servant have a few stalks to make soup for the young master?" I generously pulled out a few stalks of cabbage for her. Next thing I know, all the maids and servants are swarming me. Even the butler had Mozi put in a good word to beg for some greens. I teased them while harvesting. "Didn't y'all say growing veggies was beneath the dignity of the manor before?" The head maid blushed and stammered. "This servant was blind. Your veggies are literally glowing with spiritual energy. They taste way better than any fancy feast." I just laughed. Spiritual energy, my foot. It's just me watering them daily, using some chicken manure, and actually putting in the work. One afternoon, Shen Yan was busy practicing calligraphy in the study. I checked it out, and his penmanship was honestly a sleigh, bold, powerful, and way better than any temple plaque. I swiped a few sheets of his finished work, hid them in my robes, and sprinted straight to the chicken coop. Shen Yan and Mosi followed me, looking totally confused. "Hey, why are you taking my calligraphy papers?" I stood on my tiptoes to paste the calligraphy on the wooden slats of the coop, patted my hands, and said, "These characters are so fancy. Sticking them here will definitely ward off evil spirits, so the weasels won't dare come back." Shen stared at his masterpiece-filled chicken coop, caught between laughing and crying. He walked over and sat down, pointing at each of his calligraphy strokes that were supposed to be art. "That kid is teaching me. That character is pronounced eat." The afternoon sun was warm, baby chicks were chirping at our feet, and Shen Yan's crisp voice echoed through the courtyard. Days like these just hit different. They're so peaceful. A few days later, Princess Royal Tai Yan invited all the noble women of the manor to an event. Before we left, the madam sent the house tailor to measure me for some high-end silk and brocade gowns. I just picked a simple, rustic dress, and the madam was so annoyed, she almost grabbed her chest in frustration. I grabbed a small woven basket from the garden, filled to the brim with ripe red berries. "Mother, these are super sweet. Let's bring them for everyone to try." I'd actually cleared a small patch of land near the veggie garden to grow strawberries. They were perfectly ripe, big, round, and juicy, the definition of delicious. When we arrived at the princess's estate, the garden was full of elite socialites dripped in diamonds and gold. Shen Wanru was actually there too, probably because the second madam begged the madam to let her come, making an exception. "I just need her to stay in her lane and stop acting out." Shen Wanyan had dialed back her usual arrogance, but she still couldn't help being petty. Seeing me in a plain linen dress carrying a simple woven basket, she immediately sashayed over to throw some shade. "Is my sister-in-law just getting back from the fields? Showing up to a banquet dressed like that is just embarrassing." The other noble ladies started snickering, looking at me with pure judgment. I didn't give them the time of day, walked straight to the table, and dumped the strawberries out of my basket. The bright red strawberries piled up on the white porcelain plate, their sweet scent instantly grabbing everyone's attention. The Grand Princess curiously picked one up to taste, her eyes lighting up. "What is this fruit? It's so sweet and refreshing. This Highness has truly never seen anything like it." Reporting to the Grand Princess, "These are strawberries I grew in my own courtyard." Shen Wanyan wasn't buying it, so she snatched one to taste. Her face instantly fell, and she couldn't spit out another snarky comment. The other noble ladies, seeing that, swarmed over to get a taste. Everyone couldn't stop raving about them. They even started surrounding me to ask how to grow them. "Young mistress, how do you cultivate these strawberries? Could you teach us? My family has a garden, and I'd love to grow some too." The initial shade-throwing turned into total obsession. I was the main character, surrounded by everyone, while explaining how to water and fertilize. I honestly didn't expect it to be the center of attention. Just as I was spilling the tea, I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned around and it was Shen Yan. I don't know how long he'd been standing there, but his expression was ice cold as he gripped my wrist with a vibe that didn't allow for an argument. "Come with me. he said, dragging me into a secluded area. What's wrong, heir? I haven't finished handing out the strawberries yet. Shen Yan stared at the spot where I'd just been surrounded, his brows furrowing. Don't get too close to them. His grip was a little too tight, and his eyes held a complex emotion I couldn't read. It was like he was terrified someone was going to snatch me away. I reached into my pocket and found one last strawberry, handing it to him. It's so sweet, try it. Shen Yan took the strawberry but didn't eat it. He just looked down at me, his icy glare melting into something much softer. Yeah, it's sweet. After returning from the Grand Princess's estate, my strawberry plants became the biggest flex in the Marquis's residence. Even the matriarch ordered people to move 2 pots to her private quarters. But the second branch, even while grounded, is still acting messy. Shen Wanyan keeps crossing my path from a distance, still shooting me those hateful glares from behind the corridor. I couldn't care less. I was too busy minding my own business and tending to my veggies. Seeing those radishes getting ready for harvest, I made sure to check on them constantly. One morning, just as the sun was peeking out, I grabbed my hoe and headed to the field, but something felt totally off. That patch of radishes on the far west side. The soil was a weird dark shade, almost grayish, and when I got closer, underneath the earthy smell, there was a super nasty pungent odor. Even the earthworms that usually pop up for air were ghosting me. Not a single one in sight. The baby greens were sprouting, but their tips were already starting to look sickly and yellow. I knelt down to rub some dirt between my fingers. It felt gritty and off. This soil was definitely compromised. Back home, whenever someone messed with the fields, the crops would either wilt or rot away. It hit me instantly. It was obviously the second branch being salty and trying to sabotage my garden by poisoning the soil. Motzi showed up with breakfast just in time, and she looked shook, seeing me staring blankly at the dirt. Young mistress, what's wrong? I shook my head, brushing the soil off my hands. Nothing, just a little dry. I'm not planning on making a scene. The second branch is already grounded, and making a fuss would just stir up drama in the imperial estate. Plus, I don't want to stress Shen Yan out. Disputes in the field should be handled with field tactics. No need to drag him into this petty mess. I went back to my room, and in no time I was back with my hoe, carrying 2 wooden buckets, ready to get to work. I carefully dug up all the contaminated, poisoned soil, dumped it in one bucket, and filled the empty spots with fresh, healthy black soil from the other side of the field. I hauled that bucket of toxic waste straight to the second madam's courtyard. Inside, she was surrounded by expensive blooming orchids, hacking away at them with shears, clearly throwing a tantrum because of her house arrest. Why are you here? Get out. Seeing me made her temper flare. She had nowhere to offload that toxicity. I completely ignored her and marched straight to her most prized flower pots. Tipped the bucket and splat. All that poisoned, black dirt went right in, burying half the orchids. You! The second madam was literally vibrating with rage, pointing a finger at me, speechless. I just kept a straight face and told her, your soil looked trashy, so I swapped it out for something better. With that, I grabbed my empty bucket and walked away, leaving her there looking like she was about to pass out from pure spite. I knew the madam would come for me, but I'm honestly unbothered. She was the one who had someone sprinkle that soil into my vegetable patch. So I just returned it to its rightful owner. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Sure enough, that afternoon, the second madam showed up with her maid to spill the tea to the head madam. Sobbing like a total pick-me girl, claiming I intentionally destroyed her precious orchids, and adding extra spice by saying I'm disrespectful to my elders, with a heart as black as a snake's. The head madam was slightly skeptical, but still had someone summon me to face the music. The second I stepped into the hall, I saw Shen Yan chilling there, looking like he'd already figured out the whole plot. Why did you destroy the second madam's flowers? When the head asked, I replied, she sent people to dump toxic soil in my vegetable garden, trying to kill my crops, so I used that same soil to pay her a visit, so her flowers could get a taste of their own medicine. The second madam's face did a full 180, and she shrieked, you're lying. When did I ever send anyone to your garden? I didn't say another word, just looked straight at Shen Yan. Shen Yan glanced at the second madam, his tone calm but dripping with main character energy. Second aunt, go back to your courtyard and rest. He isn't the type to cause drama for no reason. The second madam was clearly pressed, but Shen Yan's vibe shut her down, so she just shot me a death glare and dipped. She probably never expected that the excuse she fabricated would end up being the receipts for her own downfall. That night, the second madam's courtyard was absolute chaos. I lurked by the window and heard her sobbing over her dying flowers, wailing that every single prize-winning plant in her garden had turned black overnight, and the leaves were rotting into mush. Shortly after, the maids were screaming in panic, saying the second madam was covered in hives, itching and in pain, forcing the head madam to call the royal physician immediately. I didn't even bother going to watch the mess. I slept like a baby, and woke up to news that Shen Yan personally raided her courtyard. From the soil in those fancy flower pots, they found the exact same chronic toxin that had once been used on my vegetable patch. It's a low-key poison, but extremely snake-like and sinister. It didn't just quietly nuke her garden. The real tea is that it's highly reactive. If you're stuck in an enclosed space with that stuff for too long, the toxins will slowly seep into your bloodstream. Coupled with the cold poison Shen Yan suffered back in the day, it's a death trap. Lightly, you're bedridden and crippled, but heavily, you're just dead. The second branch's ambition is so obvious it's painful. They weren't just trying to ruin some plants. They clearly used that toxic soil as a low-key weapon to quietly send Shen Yan and me to an early grave. To seize the inheritance and the title, they were ruthless enough to toss blood relations out the window, hiding poison in everyday life, plotting in the shadows. Their hearts are so dark it's chilling. Once the truth came out, Shen Yan's expression was stone cold. He immediately reported the second branch of the patriarch for attempting to murder a clan member, accusing them of plotting to steal the title and ordering them to be exiled from the estate, shipping them off to a remote manor to rot, never allowed to return to the capital. He completely purged the snakes from within the estate. Mochi was the one who spilled all this tea to me. I just nodded, kept my head down, and went back to watering my radishes. Shen Yan handled all of that business without asking me for a single word. But at sunset he showed up at my vegetable patch anyway. He stood on the edge of the field, watching me roast sweet potatoes, his eyes smiling but hiding a complicated vibe I couldn't quite read. He sat down next to me, staring at my charcoal-stained fingertips. "Ahuo, you were the one who swapped the soil in the second madam's courtyard, right? Someone tried to wreck my veggie patch. Why didn't you tell me? Field affairs should stay in the fields. I don't want to bother you while you're managing the estate's major issues. I can handle my garden just fine without adding to your headache." Shen Yan suddenly leaned in and pulled me into his arms, making me freeze up completely. His chest was so warm, smelling of clean herbs mixed with the sweet scent of roasted sweet potatoes. "You, honestly." He sighed, gently patting my back. The hug caught me so off guard, but after a moment of hesitation, I held out half my sweet potato toward his lips. "Eat up, it's super sweet." After the second branch got the boot, nobody in the estate had any more drama to spill about my gardening habits. Even Grandma Zhang from the kitchen would stand outside my gate every day, hoping to score some fresh greens. My crops were thriving, harvest after harvest. The storeroom was packed with cabbage, and my radishes were looking crisp and juicy. The strawberries kept coming, and even the chicks grew into fat chickens, laying baskets of eggs every single day. That evening, when Shen Yan returned from court, he saw me squatting in the courtyard sorting strawberries and walked over with a smile. With all these vegetables and fruits, the manor can't possibly finish them all. It's honestly a crime to let them go to waste. Tossing them feels so wrong, but we don't really have anyone to gift them to. Mozi chimed in from the side. "Young mistress, why not open a shop? People in the capital have never tasted produce as high quality as yours. It'll definitely be a hit, and it's a great way to share your harvest with everyone. Isn't that a win-win?" My eyes literally lit up. This idea was a whole vibe. The crops are thriving, and letting them rot would be such a waste. And nothing beats letting more people taste that garden-fresh goodness. I grabbed Shen Yan's sleeve, hyped up. "Yes, let's do it. Open the shop. I want the whole capital to taste my harvest. Strawberries sweeter than honey, radishes with that perfect crunch." Seeing me so excited, a soft smile hit Shen Yan's eyes as he immediately agreed. "Anything you like, just leave it to me." He's always been efficient, so he had Mozi scouting for a storefront near the manor that same day, specifically asking for a high-traffic area, close to the fields with a clean, functional layout. By the next morning, Mozi came back with a win, a spot 2 blocks south of the manor, right at the entrance of the market. It's got a solid flow of people without being too chaotic. The shop isn't huge, just a main room and a tiny courtyard, but the bones of the place are perfect. It's got big bright windows where the sunlight hits everything, keeping it spotless. The backyard is ideal for staging the produce, and we can even set up a simple shed for the tools. It couldn't be more convenient. When Shen Yan took me to see it, I was low-key obsessed the second I stepped inside. The dirt floors are packed firm, no mold in the corners, and even the rafters are clean and airy. I sat down to check the floor, then wandered to the window and pushed it open. The buzz of the market mixed with the scent of fresh greens filled the room. It was such a mood. This is it. This is the one. It's perfect for moving the produce, and it's super convenient for customers. Seeing how happy I was, Shen Yan immediately closed the deal with the previous owner, making the paperwork vanish in the blink of an eye, and before I knew it, he already had people deep cleaning the place. Plus he hired a carpenter to build some sturdy wooden shelves, and even set up a little table by the window so I can weigh the veggies and handle the cash. The thing I'm most hyped about is the storefront sign. I hit up Mozi for some brush and ink. After deep reflection, I carefully brushed 4 characters onto the paper: he in vegetable garden. My handwriting isn't exactly elegant, but it hits with the rugged strength of someone who actually touches dirt for a living. He is my name, but it's also the crops sprouting up from the earth. Anne is my wish for peaceful days, steady business, and that everyone who eats my veggies stays healthy and blessed. Before the grand opening, I rounded up the maids to help me sort and display the freshly picked produce. The bok choy was tied into neat little bundles, the radishes still dusted with fresh soil, strawberries tucked into shaded baskets, and I even set out 2 jars of my signature pickled veggies in the corner. Shen Yan was terrified I'd overwork myself, so he spent the whole time building shelves, wiping cabinets, and setting prices. We kept them low so the common folk could actually afford them. On the big day, the store was surrounded by a massive crowd before the sun even fully rose. Passersby were curious, realizing this shop belonged to the estate's princess consort, and when they got close enough to sample the strawberries I offered, their eyes literally lit up. The fruit was so sweet, even sweeter than honey. Word traveled fast, and within half a day, the line was wrapped around the block. Mother Zhang brought the kitchen staff to buy in bulk, claiming they needed to stew cabbage soup for the prince. The royal manor maids showed up with food boxes, demanding strawberries because their mistress had a major craving. Even eunuch Li from the palace showed up after hearing the buzz, explaining that the empress herself had heard about my homegrown veggies and specifically ordered a full crate of cabbage and strawberries. I was rocking a simple linen dress, standing behind the counter, weighing and bagging produce with total main character energy. An old granny hobbled in on her cane, looking for radishes, and when she mentioned her grandson was sick and lacked an appetite, I tossed in 2 extra radishes for free, and even taught her a recipe to make the soup taste divine. People whispered, "The princess consort is so kind-hearted, she doesn't look down on us like the others." After court, Shen Yan didn't even go back to the manor. He headed straight here, ditched his silk robes, and rolled up his sleeves to help me haul crates. He looked so awkward yet dead serious that the people in line couldn't stop staring. Isn't that the prince from the estate? Is he actually helping his wife run the shop? Your Highness, aren't you worried about people making fun of you for this? Shen Yan just looked at me and smiled, his eyes full of that soft, heart-melting energy. My wife grows the best produce in the land. There's nothing funny about helping her move a few extra crates. That hit different. My heart felt so warm, and I felt in the days that followed, the reputation of the Heian veggie garden totally blew up. By the crack of dawn, crowds were already lining up outside the shop. They were obsessed, saying our produce was top tier, the prices were fair, and it actually filled them up. The line stretched all the way to the end of the block. The chatter and the fresh, earthy scent made it feel like a buzzing street fair. Someone grabbed the bunch of bok choy I handed them, and couldn't help but ask, "Young madam, your greens are so fresh and crisp." And since there's a massive queue fighting over them every single day, logically, you should have hiked the prices by now. Why are you still selling them for pocket change? I just wiped my hands and laughed. The veggies came from the dirt. They aren't worth that much money. It's just good to see everyone enjoying them. I was swamped, so Shenyan helped me hire some quick-witted, honest servants to lend a hand. I even set up a little wooden table in front of the shop, serving free veggie porridge and strawberry tea for everyone to sample, while teaching them how to pick the best greens and use organic manure. Seeing me so happy every day, Shenyan started smiling way more too. As soon as he finished his official duties, he'd head over to help me close up shop and count the coins, sometimes even joining me in the fields. Watching you farm and manage sales, you're honestly more skilled at this than I am at navigating the imperial court. I brushed off the greens in my basket, feeling totally centered. Turns out, using your own hands to turn earth-grown crops into a warm meal is peak happiness. The Heian garden didn't just bring fresh produce to the capital, it gave me a sense of security in this chaotic manner, something that was actually mine. The days passed, things stayed steady, and the radishes and bok choy were hitting peak harvest season. We were even pulling in our second round of strawberries. I even pickled a few jars of veggies, just like we used to back home. That crunch when you eat them with porridge? Literally the best comfort food. One day I was hauling a bucket to water the beds. Looking at the fresh sprouts covered in dew, I felt so at peace. Mozi scurried in, looking like he'd seen a ghost, but was secretly stoked. "Young madam, someone from the palace is here. The emperor sent a decree saying he heard the heir's recovery is all thanks to your care. Plus, word of your veggie shop has reached even the highest ears. The emperor is specifically summoning you and the heir to the palace tomorrow for an audience." The madam of the house heard the tea and rushed over immediately. Had the servants packed me enough silk, satin, and gold jewelry to start a business, filled a chest with treasures, and lectured me on court etiquette, telling me to kowtow until my knees gave out to show my gratitude to the emperor. I just shook my head and pushed that dusty box of jewelry aside, then raided the pantry for a jar of my own homemade pickles, and grabbed a basket, neatly stacking it with fresh baby bok choy I plucked this morning, crunchy radishes, still smelling like the earth they grew in, and the brightest red strawberries I piped from the garden. Every single one was so plump and juicy, it was practically begging to be eaten. Honestly, this haul is way more vibe than some gaudy gold. You can't eat jewels, but fresh greens are a whole mood, and strawberries paired with my pickled porridge, elite. I grew it all myself. It's time the emperor gets a taste of something real for once. The madam was losing her mind, screaming that I'm clueless and asking who the hell brings peasant food into the palace. Shen Yan just laughed, gently fixing the straps on my basket, so the strawberries wouldn't bruise. Mother, let a huo be. The emperor hates performative trash. A huo sincerity is the real flex here. He wrapped the jar of pickles, tucked it safely into the basket, and straightened my robes. Don't sweat it. I'm going with you tomorrow. The emperor is definitely going to love this humble energy. Once we hit the palace, the eunuchs and maids clocked my basket immediately, seeing the corner of a ceramic jar sticking out, along with the vibrant greens and the pop of red from the berries. They were side-eyeing me, trying to hide their smirks. A noble heir's wife waltzing into court with nothing but produce. In their eyes, I was being straight-up trashy and delulu, and they were definitely living for the potential face-slapping moment. The emperor sat on the throne looking chill, but his eyes were scanning me like he was checking my receipts. When he saw us approach, he waved us over. Shen Yan, get over here and let me see you. Heard you've been doing better lately. You're looking main character material. Shen Yan led me up to kowtow, and the emperor's gaze locked onto me. No longer the polite, boring look he gives every other socialite, but a full head-to-toe scan taking in every detail, with a look of genuine curiosity and low-key respect. So, this is the heir's wife, I assume? I heard Shen Yan's been sick for years, and it was only after your radish soup that he finally started having a glow-up. His Majesty was skeptical at first, but seeing you looking so down-to-earth today, you really do seem like someone with a legit secret recipe. He paused, then suddenly chuckled, looking totally at ease. Right, I also heard you opened the Heian veggie garden near the marquis estate, and business is absolutely booming. Your Majesty, that is indeed true. We had way too many veggies growing in the fields, and the marquis estate couldn't eat them all. It felt like such a waste to throw them out, so I figured I'd open a shop so everyone could get a taste of the fresh stuff. This consort priced them at cost, so even regular folks could afford them. Seeing everyone happy and well-fed is enough for me. Shen Yan chimed in, Your Majesty, he never plays dirty when it comes to business. Everything is harvested and sold on the same day. She never skimps on weight, and even gives extra to the elderly and kids in need. The commoners in the capital say the Heian shop doesn't just sell vegetables, it sells peace of mind. The emperor nodded continuously as he listened, his gaze filled with growing admiration. What a great way to put it, selling peace of mind. These days, most merchants are just chasing profits. Yet you've managed to stay so grounded. You know both farming and business, and you couldn't care less about vanity, truly a rare find. As he spoke, his eyes naturally drifted to the bamboo basket in my hand, his curiosity piqued. The stuff in your basket must be exactly what you want me to taste test. Veggies, fruits, and a jar. It's definitely a departure from the usual priceless treasures people gift me. I held out the basket and replied calmly, Your Majesty, in the basket are green cabbages picked just this morning, crispy radishes, and the best-selling strawberries from the shop, all freshly plucked straight from the soil. That jar is filled with my homemade pickles. They're absolute perfection with a bowl of porridge. This consort has no fancy jewels to offer, only a humble taste of the real deal for you to try. As soon as those words left my lips, the eunuchs and palace maids held back their giggles, and even the high officials looked shook. They'd probably never seen anyone gift the emperor literal garden produce before. Yet the emperor didn't seem annoyed at all. Instead, he looked even more intrigued and immediately ordered his staff to bring out bowls, chopsticks, and white porcelain plates. It's perfect timing. I've been dying to know what all the hype is about, with the veggies the whole city is lining up for. The eunuch quickly sliced the radishes, arranged the strawberries on a small plate, and set out the pickles. The emperor reached out and grabbed it. It had that crisp, garden-fresh vibe. One bite and the emperor gave a nod. It was definitely way more refreshing than the reheated veggies from the imperial kitchen. He picked up a strawberry and took a bite. The juice practically melted on his tongue. It was perfectly sweet. No cap, no wonder the commoners were obsessing over these. Finally, he grabbed some pickled vegetables to pair with his white porridge. Truly a top-tier snack. Lately, nothing has been hitting the spot, but this is it. Tastes better than all those fancy, expensive delicacies combined. After a few more bites, he ordered his head eunuch to serve the crown prince some as well. Try it, son. The produce from Heian Garden is the real deal. Henry really has the whole city, from royals to commoners, down bad for his crops. Crown Prince Ansong couldn't stop raving about the taste either. The court was dead silent. Nobody dared to clown on me anymore, and everyone was looking on in total shock. The emperor, clearly in his best mood ever, immediately ordered a reward of 100 gold bars. Not to mention the piles of silk and rare, priceless treasures. When the eunuchs brought out the gifts, the sparkle was blinding. The court officials were legit shook. Who would have thought a jar of pickles could bag such a massive payday? I ignored the treasure, looked the emperor straight in the eye, and kept it 100. Your Majesty, I don't want any of this. I heard there's a random plot of land sitting empty on the west side of the imperial garden. Could your highness grant that patch to me so I can grow potatoes? If I grow enough, the palace gets fresh produce, and my shop can keep the commoners fed too. Everyone in the hall was gagged. Even Shenyan turned to look at me, his eyes full of a smile he couldn't hide. The emperor paused, then burst into a loud, genuine laugh. He was absolutely living for this potato idea. Ahahaha, brilliant. What a genius move by the heir's consort. Not asking for gold or silver, just wanting to farm, and thinking of the palace and the people while at it. A personality like this is rare. Consider it done. I hereby bestow upon you the title of Princess Heian, and that land in the garden is officially yours to manage. Nobody is allowed to mess with it. From now on, the palace will exclusively source from Heian Garden, and the imperial kitchen will learn a thing or two from these flavors. I bowed in gratitude, low-key celebrating inside. This meant I could finally scale up my farming operation. The eunuchs and maids who were low-key dragging me earlier were now bowing, terrified to even breathe too loud. Later, when I ran into all those high-ranking officials and noble women, the same people who used to treat me like a basic country bumpkin, they were now all kneeling and paying their respects properly, calling me princess with the most performative, respectful attitude ever. Back at the marquis's estate, Shenyan looked at the mountain of gold and treasures, gave my nose a little boop and teased me. Look at you. You're a whole princess now. Even wealthier than me. I gathered all the gold from the vault and dumped it straight into Shenyan's arms. He used to be sick and needed meds. Even though he's recovered, we need a safety net plus high-quality paper for his calligraphy. His handwriting is art, but the paper he's using is ancient. Time for an upgrade. This gold is plenty. Honestly, no amount of money beats Shenyan's health or the way he puts ink to paper. Shenyan cradled the pile of gold, his eyes turning soft before pulling me into a hug. Silly, having you here is worth more than anything else. He leaned down to kiss my temple, the sunlight filtering through the curtains and bathing us in a golden glow. The gold in his arms was warm, but his embrace felt even warmer. The news of me becoming the Princess of Heian spread through the capital like wildfire. The Heian Garden business went absolutely viral. It wasn't just the commoners lining up for produce. The pre-orders from nobles and royals were already booked out for the next month, and even the imperial court made it a recurring routine to source from us. Eunuch Li would arrive every time with a grin. The emperor can't stop praising the princess's vegetables. The imperial kitchen is literally counting the minutes until your fresh shipment arrives. But of course, fame attracts haters, and our glow-up made plenty of people green with envy. At first it was just petty officials gossiping that a princess running a shop was a bad look for the estate. The first real snake to slide out was Boss Wang San from the Fu Shun store on the west side. He used to rake in serious coin by supplying produce to the elite families. Ever since my shop opened, his business tanked by more than half. That morning, Wang San showed up with a group of thugs, blocked my entrance, and kicked over a basket of strawberries. The ripe fruit rolled into the dirt as he sneered, "What kind of princess are you? Running this dumpy shop? It's obvious your vegetables were grown using black magic. How else would they be this popular? My regular customers got food poisoning after eating your stuff. You need to explain yourself." His thugs started shoving the display shelves, forcing the line of customers to back away in terror. I knelt to pick up the ruined strawberries, my heart aching, before looking up to give him a cold, hard stare. "My produce is grown by hand with proper care. I've never touched any dark arts. You claim someone got sick? Bring them here to face me instead of spreading your toxic lies. You little country bumpkin, how dare you talk back to me?" Wang San reached out to shove me, but Mo Si lunged forward just in time to stop him. "Watch your tone, Boss Wang. The lady is a princess granted by the emperor himself. You're causing a scene and attacking royalty. Aren't you afraid of being executed?" "Why should I be skissed? She's just a peasant. For all we know, that status of county princess was swindled through dark magic." The moment the words left his mouth, the crowd clapped back. I eat the veggies from Hian's shop every single day, and I've never been healthier, so what are you even on about? Shopkeeper Wang is just pressed because his own produce is overpriced in mid, which is why his business is flopping. The old woman I helped earlier stepped up, leaning on her cane, and pointed right at Wang San. You black-hearted piece of work. The county princess kindly taught us how to farm, and even gave my grandson free vegetable porridge. How could you dare to slander her like this? The crowd started dogpiling on Wang San, whose face was morphing into every shade of failure. Just then Shen Yan came galloping in on his horse. He'd just finished court and heard the tea, and his expression was giving major, about to end this man's career energy. He dismounted, walked to my side, brushed the dirt off my hands, and turned to Wang San with a gaze that could kill. Shopkeeper Wang, fabricating rumors to slander a state-appointed county princess and sabotaging her business. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Wang San saw Shen Yan wasn't playing, and his legs turned to jelly, but he still tried to gaslight everyone. I'm not lying. Someone really did get sick after eating her veggies. Oh really? Who? When? Where? Was there an imperial physician to confirm it? If you can't provide receipts, then this is a crime of lèse majesté. We're taking you straight to the Shuntian prefecture. I'll invite the prefecture magistrate to investigate this personally, and while we're at it, we'll dig into your whereabouts over the past few days to see exactly who is pulling your strings. Wang San was absolutely shook. His soul practically left his body as he collapsed to the floor. Your Highness, have mercy. It was just a momentary lapse in judgment. A stranger came to see me a few days ago, gave me 50 taels of silver to come here and stir up drama. They claimed to be from the sect branch of the marquis estate, hiding in the shadows, just trying to destroy the Shuntian prefecture guards moved fast, dragging Wang San and his goons away in handcuffs. They kept digging into the remaining members of the second branch, catching a few snakes who were out there stirring up trouble. Once the truth came out, the commoners swarmed the shop to buy veggies, swearing it was all to support the down-to-earth princess. I had the staff restock the produce and handed out free strawberries to the crowd. The shop was busier than ever, serving absolute main character energy. But the drama hadn't completely died down just yet. A few days later, rumors started floating around the capital again, calling me a total country bumpkin, and asking how someone like me had the nerve to run such a profitable business. They even claimed that my royal title was a fluke, implying I used some shady manipulative tricks to enchant Shen Yan and the emperor. These rumors spread like wildfire, and even the clueless citizens started pointing fingers. Shen Yan was worried I'd be upset, so he made us close the shop for a few days and took me for a walk through the Imperial Gardens vegetable patch. I sat there planting potatoes laughing at him. I don't care what they say about my veggies. One bite and they'll know the quality speaks for itself. You know better than anyone that I'm actually out here, grinding and getting things done. Shen Yan sat down beside me and pulled a weed. I know you're unbothered, but I'm not about to let anyone throw shade at you. He secretly had his people gather receipts on the rumor mongers, and invited eunuch Li from the palace, along with the commoners I'd helped, and the nobles who loved my produce, to testify. He laid the receipts out right in the middle of the imperial court. The emperor caught wind of the situation, and personally issued a decree. He praised my integrity and dedication to agriculture, holding me up as a total girl boss role model. He even gifted me top-tier farming tools and seeds to make sure the imperial gardens' crops stayed thriving. Once that decree dropped, the rumors vanished into thin air, and the reputation of Heian Vegetable Garden hit a new peak. People were literally traveling from the outskirts of the city just to buy my veggies, saying eating the princess's crops brings good karma. I kept my daily grind at the shop, but I knew in my heart that, no matter how much royal favor I got, or how much status I leveled up, it was still my own two hands that kept me thriving. Just like the crops in the field, you only get out what you put in. With the shop business stable, I handed the management over to my staff so I could focus on my garden. Shen Yan basically gave me full control over the open land in the imperial garden, and even sent over premium-tier farming gear. He even made sure the wooden watering buckets were the lightweight, high-end kind. So there I was, spending every day between the imperial garden and my own manor, living my best life planting potatoes. Shen Yan would come to stay by my side as soon as he finished his court duties, sometimes helping me pull weeds, sometimes just sitting on the ridge watching me work, and honestly, these days were sweeter than roasted sweet potatoes. Such peaceful times made me forget my past struggles, but some past trauma just refuses to stay buried. That afternoon, I was squatting in the Marquis's estate garden planting potatoes when Mo Si ran over, looking super stressed. Young mistress, there's a woman at the gate demanding to see you. She claims she's your birth mother, and she's out there sobbing and screaming to get in, saying that since you're living the high life now, You owe it to her to acknowledge her. Hearing the words birth mother felt like being hit by two giant blocks of ice. The small hoe dropped from my hand with a thud, and my fingertips turned ice cold. My mind instantly flashed back to those dark, cramped rooms from my childhood, where Mom would always shield me and whisper, begging for mercy, while Dad was busy hurling insults. Yet that same woman, later, with red, teary eyes, shoved me into a carriage heading for the marquis' estate, shoving half a piece of cornmeal cake into my hand and choking out, "Ahuo, you have to survive." Back then, I realized her love was real, but so was the fact that poverty and my father's greed led her to sell me for food. For nights before I was sold, I'd hear her sobbing outside my door, yet in the end, she still had the heart to send me away. I started shaking, instinctively backing toward the spot where Shenyan usually stood, my voice trembling as I said, "Tell her to leave. I'm not seeing her." But before Motsi could turn around, that familiar, piercing screeching reached us from the gate. It was loud enough to wake the dead. I bit my lip, feeling panicked, terrified, and an indescribable bitterness all at once. Suddenly, a pair of warm hands gently gripped my wrists. It was Shen Yan. He must have left court earlier than I realized. His eyes filled with concern as he softly reassured me. "Don't be afraid, I'm here. I'll go out there with you. And if you don't want to deal with her, we'll kick her out ourselves." Shen Yan led me to the gates, where we saw a woman clinging to the frame, wailing. She was wearing a tattered, patched-up dress. Her hair was a brittle, messy disaster, and her face was weathered by hardship. It was her, Lu Shi, my birth mother. As soon as she spotted me, her eyes lit up. She broke past the guards and lunged to grab me, but Shen Yan blocked her. Lu Shi stumbled back, plopped onto the ground, and started slapping her thighs while howling. It was a chaotic mess, reeks of both shame and pure greed. "Oh, my poor Ahuo, my sweet unlucky daughter, you've finally come to see me." Back then, Mom really had no choice. Your father was just so obsessed with money. When the Marquis's estate came looking for a bride for the heir's spirit marriage, and offered silver, your father agreed on the spot. I knew you were terrified of strangers, and I begged him for you, but in the end, I just couldn't win against him. Being part of an elite house is still living the dream compared to starving in the countryside. At least it's a way to survive. She meant part of that, but she conveniently left out that she was mostly just looking for a free ride. She took a sneaky glance at the silk robes Shen Yan was wearing, and the massive scale of the estate, her greed radiating off her like a bad vibe. Her sobbing started to shift tones. "Mother has missed you every single day, crying every night until my hair turned gray. Your father passed last year, and I'm all alone now. I simply can't go on like this. Oh, whoa, you're a lady of the court now. You can't just forget about your mother when you're living in luxury. Just give me some silver, and bring me into the estate to enjoy the good life. I can do the laundry, cook, and serve you and the heir." I hid behind Shen Yan, clutching his robes for dear life. With my head bowed low, my eyes were full of nothing but fear and confusion. All the old trauma and insecurity came rushing back. But then I looked at the gray hairs at her temples, and remembered how she once took a blow for me. So in the end, I couldn't bring myself to be cold-blooded. Seeing my silence, Lu stepped forward, wailing as she tried to grab the hem of Shen Yan's robe. "Young master, please have mercy on this old woman, and let Ahuo acknowledge her mother." Everything back then, it was all just pressure. I was forced. Shen Yan gently swatted her hand away, his voice ice-cold but radiating an authority that couldn't be challenged. "Madam Liu, you protected Awo once, and I respect that debt, but you still allowed your husband to treat her like trash. She is my wife now, a lady of the court titled by the emperor himself. I am the one who protects her." He turned to Mozi and ordered, "Bring out 100 taels of silver." Within seconds, Mozi returned with a heavy bag of silver. Shen Yan placed the bag right in front of Lu, his tone frosty and final. "These 100 taels settle two things. My gratitude for you protecting Ahuo back then, and the end of any claim you have over her life." He paused, his gaze as sharp as a blade. "From this moment on, you and Ahuo have zero connection. She isn't some commodity for you to trade for cash. She is my legitimate wife and a lady of the court. Respect her status. If you ever show up at this estate again to cause drama or clout chase using her name, don't blame me for what happens next." The moment Lu saw the silver, her eyes lit up. She snatched the bag and hugged it to her chest, her sobbing cutting off instantly. She looked up at me again, a flash of hesitation crossing her face. But in the end she gritted her teeth, clutched the silver, and stood up. Not saying another word, she turned around and booked it. She was probably terrified Shen Yan would change his mind and just wanted to bounce with the cash ASAP. Her retreating figure was frantic, showing zero attachment, just the pure greed of someone who secured the bag. Just then, a chaotic chorus of honking broke the silence. The flock of white geese I raised charged forward in a line. I'd hatched these babies from eggs I brought from the countryside myself, and now they were big, sturdy, and usually pretty chill. But they're low-key ride or die for their owner. Seeing how Lu had been manhandling me earlier, the geese were not having it, encircling me protectively, then stretching their necks at Lu's back, hissing a warning for her to never show her face again. The honking spooked the hell out of Lu, making her run even faster, until she disappeared into thin air. I stood there, watching her shadow vanish completely, and the massive weight that had been crushing my soul for years suddenly lifted. It turns out all those lingering expectations and emotional baggage evaporated the second she chose the silver over me. As the wind brushed my cheek, I whispered, half to Shen Yan, half to myself, that I didn't need to look at the sky for validation anymore. I finally had a home. Back in the village, I only had my mother's protection, forced to walk on eggshells around my father, terrified of getting hit or chewed out. But now, with Shen Yan's protection, this cozy little courtyard, my veggie patch and my geese, this is actually the home I deserve. Shen Yan turned around and pulled me gently into his arms. He could feel me trembling slightly, so he patted my back tenderly, his voice filled with empathy. He leaned down and kissed my temple, his expression solemn and unwavering. Whoa, from now on I'm here, and no one will ever dare to bully you again. I'm going to give you the most grand, high-profile coronation ceremony, so the whole world knows you are the only wife of my Shen Yan, the only person who owns my heart. I leaned into his chest, inhaling that faint, clean scent of ink, my heart melting. Who knew that finally having someone to protect you, and a place to belong, could feel this good? The warm breeze in the courtyard caught the fresh green sprouts of the potatoes I'd planted in the imperial garden, and they looked so full of life. For days now, Shen Yan had been hiding in the study with Mozi, whispering back and forth. I snuck up to ask what he was busy with, and he just smiled and ruffled my hair, saying he was prepping a little surprise for me. Later, I realized that for my investiture ceremony, he completely ignored the marquis house's traditional protocols. Even the emperor teased him for being more obsessed with his wife's ceremony than he ever was with attending court. It's honestly hilarious. He already treated me well enough, so why go to all this extra trouble? By noon on the day of the ceremony, the marquis house was buzzing with chaotic energy. The seamstress brought over my ceremonial robes. Not the typical over-the-top, heavy imperial crown and cape, but a gown cut from shimmering white brocade. Buttery soft to the touch, with ice-blue narcissus vines embroidered on the hem, a literal ode to my humble beginnings. The collar and cuffs were adorned with tiny, delicate pearls. Not a single thing felt restrictive, just pure elegance. This was exactly how I told the seamstress to style it. Shen Yan walked over to adjust my lapel, his fingertips warm against my skin. He knew I hated being restricted, so this was the perfect balance of ceremonial and comfy. I looked down, grazing the narcissus flowers on my skirt, and suddenly remembered my wedding day, crouching on the floor, shaking like a leaf. I couldn't help but laugh. This was so much better than that stuffy red veil, and way more comfortable. The Marchioness stood nearby, watching me get ready with a soft gaze, totally free of the cold side-eye she used to give me. She personally took a gold and kingfisher feather hairpin, shaped like a small sprout, and gently tucked it into my hair. Whoa, from today on you are a princess officially titled by His Majesty. No one will ever dare look down on you again. I nodded, feeling all warm and fuzzy inside. When the auspicious hour struck, the procession set off from the marquis house, a massive parade stretching for ages, while the crowd swarmed the streets to watch. I sat inside my palanquin, occasionally peeking through the curtains, catching snippets of the gossip. Is that really the Princess He-An who saved the heir with a bowl of radish soup? She looks so elegant, she must be brilliant. The old rumors about the country girl not being good enough for the sickly heir were officially cancelled. I didn't let the noise get to me, though I couldn't help but think the palanquin was way less steady than sitting on a dirt path. The investiture was held at the Manhwa Palace, with the Minister of Rights standing center stage, holding the glowing yellow imperial decree. It was the direct, heaven-ordained edict signed by the emperor himself. The decree declared that the marquis's wife, Ahwo, was humble and wise, pure of heart, using the spirit of nature to heal those in distress, and using her agricultural wisdom to find her place in the world. I praise such virtue, and hereby bestow upon her the title of Princess He-An, granting her the 4th-rank salary and 100 acres of prime farmland west of the imperial garden to manage as her own. I didn't catch all that flowery speech, but I heard Princess He-An and 100 acres of the imperial garden, and I was low-key losing my mind with excitement. Just imagine how many potatoes, radishes, and strawberries I can grow there. I followed the etiquette Shen Yan taught me, and kowtowed in gratitude. When I stood up, I saw Shen Yan nearby, looking at me with eyes brighter and warmer than the sun outside the hall. The banquet started right after the ceremony. Shen Yan specifically had it set up in an open spot in the imperial garden, with the tables placed super close to my vegetable patch. As soon as I sat down, I was beaming. The snacks on the table were all my favorites. Strawberry preserves, jade dumplings made with cabbage, and even some piping hot, fragrant roasted sweet potatoes. Shen Yan really did remember every single thing I liked to eat. The Princess Royal walked over with her wine glass and teased me. Princess Heian, this banquet of yours actually tastes better than anything from the imperial kitchen. A bunch of noblewomen flocked over, all asking me for my gardening tips at the same time. Nobody mentioned me being a country bumpkin anymore. Their eyes were filled with nothing but pure envy. I told them honestly that you have to till the soil, get plenty of sun, and use chicken manure for fertilizer. They listened so intensely, whipping out pens and paper to take notes, that I felt low-key embarrassed. While I was talking, I caught a glimpse of my white geese in the distance, strutting in a line with their necks held high like they owned the place. Ma Si was carefully following behind them, scared they'd crash the party and stress out the guests. And there were even a few chicks in baskets carried by the maids, pecking at the ground, which had all the ladies holding back giggles. The princess's livestock are actually so well behaved, they whispered. Seeing my geese and chickens arrive, my eyes lit up, and I dragged Shen Yan toward them. Shen Yan chuckled and walked with me, moving at a slow pace. They were my family, of course they had to witness my big day. He suddenly paused, his voice turning so sincere and soft, as if he were afraid the wind might carry it away. The marriage for luck back then, was a lie, but meeting you was the real deal. If not for you, I'd probably still be trapped in my icy poison, and those political schemes, living like a dead man walking. It was you who brought the scent of fresh soil into the manor, bringing life to that stagnant place, and giving me the strength. Today's investiture ceremony isn't for you to play the sycophant for anyone, but to let the entire capital know that you are the only wife of mine, Shen Yan, in this lifetime, the only person who holds my heart. I stopped, turned to look at him, the sunlight hitting the strands of his hair, his eyes now holding only tenderness and resolve, no longer the sickly, withered branch he was when we first met. Vaguely remembering how he let me pull up flowers to plant vegetables, shielding me in front of the matriarch, holding my hand and calling me his savior, my eyes suddenly welled up. I reached out to grab his arm, burying my face in his sleeve. I don't care what others think, I only need him to understand. I like growing vegetables, watching the seedlings grow tall, watching him watch worms with me, or practicing calligraphy for the chicken coop. Our little yard full of geese and chickens, filled with these peaceful, noisy days. Shen Yan gently patted my back, his laughter soft and sweet. Fine, whatever you say. From now on, I'll come to help you garden, the moment I leave court. You want to plant something? We'll plant it. I'll protect you, your geese, your chickens, and our home. As the banquet ended and twilight fell, the last rays of light hit the vegetable patch in the imperial garden. The potato sprouts I planted grew straight and elegant, the water droplets on the leaves sparkling like gems. I picked the freshest strawberry and held it to Shen Yan's lips. Try it, I just picked it, is it sweet? Shen Yan took a bite, the sweetness melting on his tongue, and he leaned down to place a soft kiss on my forehead. Sweeter than anything else in this world. In the distance, my white geese honked as if they were cheering us on. The earthworms beneath the rows quietly tilled the soil, bringing everything to life. The night breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and the warmth of a home-cooked meal. Everything was so peaceful, it made my heart feel at total ease. I know this grand investiture isn't the end, but the beautiful beginning of countless days ahead for me and Shen Yan. After the ceremony, the inner courtyard of the manor, the imperial garden patch, and my hien shop became the busiest spots in the entire capital. The imperial garden plots were kept perfectly organized by me, with layers of potatoes and radishes growing in succession, and harvests of strawberries coming in one after another, all of which were sent straight to the shop. My fresh veggie biz was already popping, and now the pre-orders are stacked until next month. I wasn't about to just sit around though. Between managing the two gardens and running the shop, I was constantly brainstorming new side hustles. I remembered using wild ginseng and radish soup to save Shen Yan's life back then. Regulars at the shop kept complaining about seasonal colds and loss of appetite, wanting some holistic stuff to nurse themselves back to health. It hit me. The village elders always said every plant has its own spirit. Some herbs quench thirst, some flowers detox the body. Surely, there had to be some combos that could fix these minor ailments. So I followed the wisdom of the weeds. I whipped up perilla leaf and ginger congee to chase away the chills and warm the body, and dried flower tea with rock sugar to cool down the internal heat. I did the initial taste test trials inside the noble house. Shen Yan said it was super refreshing, and a servant who had a cold felt like a brand new person after just 2 bowls. Since it was an absolute slay, I decided to scale up and bring these medicinal treats to the shop for everyone to enjoy. I carved out a corner of the Heian garden for a medicinal kiosk, staffed by my fastest hands, and launched the Heian medicinal congee and tea line at a price that won't break the bank. I honestly didn't expect it to pop off so hard. It sells out completely every single day. Even the palace started putting in massive orders. The empress herself said it was way more refreshing than the boring stuff the royal kitchen puts out. The shop's revenue is officially thriving. That day, Shen Yan got back from court, but instead of heading to the garden to find me like usual, he went straight to the training grounds. I had just finished portioning out the fresh perilla ginger congee for my staff at Heian. It's our best seller, and is always in high demand, so I grabbed a warm bowl and went to find him. From a distance I saw him looking sharp in his training gear, drawing his bow. He hit the bullseye dead on, the sunlight hitting him just right. His back was straight, his face had a healthy glow. There wasn't a single trace left of his old, sickly vibes. "Shen Yan," I called out, handing him the bowl. "I just whipped this up for the shop. The perilla ginger congee is great for clearing chills. It's perfect for you after a workout." He put down his bow, took the bowl, and polished it off with a subtle smirk. "Anything Ahi makes is way more effective than the bland health soups the royal kitchen serves." I scratched my head, eyeing his newly toned biceps. "You just need to eat more food from the earth, and soak up some sun, you'll be ripped in no time. I'm gonna plant some more soybeans next so I can make you fresh soy milk. It's great for the body, and once we harvest, I'll add a soy kiosk to the shop. People are definitely going to be obsessed with it." He reached out to stroke my hair, his eyes filled with such tenderness. "Fine, whatever you say, my love. My Ahi isn't just a pro at farming and running shops, she's literally a genius doctor too." But that sweet moment didn't last long before a decree arrived from the palace. The empress claimed she'd heard of my legendary green thumb, and specifically summoned me to the palace to learn a few tricks. The madam of the manor scrambled to doll me up, shoving all sorts of flower seeds into my hands, and nagging me to stay on my best behavior. But once I got to the empress's quarters, I realized she wasn't interested in actual gardening. Turns out, the master gardener in the palace had killed off her prize peonies, and she'd been losing sleep over it ever since. The empress grabbed my hand, pointing at the withered peonies, and sighing. "Princess Heian, we never miss a beat with the watering or fertilizing, so why are they still dying?" I knelt down to poke at the soil. It was packed way too tight for the roots to even breathe. "Your Highness, this soil is too compacted. The roots are suffocating. You have to treat them like you're growing cabbage. Loosen the soil so the sun can reach it. The roots need to dig deep to actually thrive." "Loosen the soil?" The gardener said these peonies are precious and shouldn't be touched. Plants and people aren't so different, really. I grabbed a small hoe and started breaking up the dirt in the pot. No matter how precious, they need to touch the earth. Only with deep roots can they survive the storm. The empress watched, mesmerized, eventually rolling up her own sleeves to help me work the dirt. The court ladies nearby were shook to their cores, but the empress was genuinely beaming. "Princess Heian speaks the truth. Getting your hands dirty is way more practical than listening to the gardener's flowery nonsense." A few days after I got back from the palace, a young man named Afu showed up at the manor, begging for a job as a cleaner. Moza whispered to me that Afu was actually a plant sent by Lord Wang, Shen Yan's rival, hoping to catch me acting like an idiot so they could drag Shen Yan's name through the mud at court. I looked at Afu. He was sturdy, and looked like he actually knew how to work, so I dragged him straight to the chicken coop. If he wanted to work here, he was going to earn his keep. "My chicken coop is long overdue for a clean. Come on, grab a shovel. We've got fertilizer to collect for the soil." Afu looked completely stunned. He clearly wasn't expecting a princess to put him on poop duty, and he looked visibly stressed. "Princess, Afu caught a whiff of the stench, and his face went ghostly pale. I handed him an iron shovel. "Why are you acting like some tasks are beneath you? Look at my vegetables growing so lush. It's all thanks to the chicken manure. Hard work makes for a healthy body and a solid, grounded heart." I didn't care if he wanted to or not. I started shoveling the manure myself. Afu had no choice but to grit his teeth and follow suit. It looks easy, but it's actually exhausting work. The sun was beating down, leaving him drenched in sweat and unable to even stand up straight. While I shoveled, I told him, "Look at these earthworms. They love burrowing into rich soil, which just proves this fertilizer is top tier. Humans are the same. You need to stay grounded and stop looking for shady shortcuts." By the end of the day, Afuk was so dead tired, he collapsed on the ridge of the field, lacking the strength to even speak. At sunset, Shenyan strolled over and saw Afuk bowing to me repeatedly. "Your Highness, I was wrong. My intentions for joining your estate were twisted because someone put me up to it. They wanted me to find things I shouldn't have been looking for. But seeing you work in the fields and the shop, I see you're more upright and bright than anyone I've ever met. I swear that from here on out, I'll be a good person and quit the shady antics for good." I chuckled and handed him a piece of roasted sweet potato. "It's fine, as long as you're willing to work. Everyone's a decent person in my book. Just stay at the estate and help me deliver vegetables. It's a lot more relaxing than plotting nonsense." A fuck took the sweet potato, eyes rimmed with red, and nodded vigorously. Thank you, Your Highness. I promise I'll work hard from now on. Shen Yan walked up from behind, pulling me into a gentle embrace with a playful smirk. My lady truly has hidden wisdom. With just a few words and a shovel of manure, you've totally won him over. I took a bite of the sweet potato. What hidden wisdom, please? I just think that when people are idle, they start thinking up toxic drama, but if they stay busy, watch the seedlings grow, and see the shop booming, they won't have the energy left to scheme against anyone. He let out a soft laugh and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, saying, Fine. It seems your garden is about to become the most popular spot in the capital. And why wouldn't it be? Before long, even more people were begging to join the estate, claiming they wanted to learn my gardening and herbal medicine methods. So I put them to work tilling soil, watering crops, and tending the chickens, while the quick-handed ones stayed at the shop to handle customers and pack orders. The manor's backyard and the storefront were buzzing with energy, filled with nothing but laughter and good vibes. The potatoes from the imperial garden were finally harvested, and I was squatting by the ridge, picking up the leftover scraps, getting ready to sow winter barley. It'd make perfect bread for Shen Yan. Plus I could add new items like barley flour and dry rations to the shop. It was definitely going to be a hit. Mo Si came rushing over, looking shook. Young madam, the heir just got out of court and he looks pressed, like some major drama just went down. My heart legit dropped. I barely stood up before I saw Shen Yan walking toward me with long strides. He was wearing his white silk robes, but they were covered in dust. His brows were furrowed, and the usual warmth in his eyes was replaced by pure dark gloom. He grabbed my hand, his palms were freezing, and told me the border situation was chaotic, and the grain supply was failing. The soldiers couldn't hold out much longer, so he'd already volunteered to lead the transport of the grain tomorrow. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I squeezed his hand tight. He'd only just recovered from his illness. The border is miles away and freezing, and swords don't exactly have eyes. How could I let him risk it all? But seeing the patriotism in his eyes, I knew I couldn't stop him. I bit my lip, trying to suppress the anxiety gnawing at me. Fine, I'll go get everything ready for you right now. The food for the road had to be filling, weatherproof, and give him actual energy. My shop was stocked with dried greens, dried radishes, and smoked beef. It was all coming in handy. I didn't pull a scene or throw a tantrum. I knew Shen Yan carried the weight of the nation, and crying wouldn't do a thing, so I focused on doing something actually useful for him. That night, the kitchen lights stayed on until dawn. I raided the shop for all the dried goods I had, chopped them up and mixed them with roasted barley and millet flour, then added in the savory, fragrant smoked meat. With a drizzle of honey and sesame oil, I hand-rolled them into balls and pressed them between stone slabs until they were dense, solid rations. That way they were compact and filling. Plus they had the subtle sweetness of the vegetables. Way better than standard military rations. I even threw in some dried sour sweet wild berries, and packed them into little bags tucked away in the corners of the supply carts. On the final night before he left, I finally stepped out of the kitchen, holding a small plate of the rations I'd just finished. I held a piece to his lips. Taste this, check it out. It's salty, chewy, and savory. Eat it whenever you're hungry on the road. He took a bite of the dried meat, his eyes slowly turning red. His throat tightened, and he could only choke out 2 words. So good. Don't just settle for scraps while out there. No matter how busy you are, eat your meals properly. I'll look after the dash shop, so don't you worry. By the time I saw him out of the city, the morning mist hadn't yet lifted, and the flags at the city gates were snapping in the wind. Shen Yan held my hand, his step sluggish, clearly not wanting to leave. Ahuo, wait for me to return so we can plant potatoes together and harvest the barley. I'm never leaving your side again. I pulled a small cloth pouch embroidered with a sprout pattern from my robe and pressed it into his palm. Inside was a single round seed. Shen Yan squeezed the pouch, his voice raspy. What is this? I looked up at him, my eyes starting to sting. This is a sunflower seed. It's drought-resistant, unfazed by the wind, and possesses the most vibrant vitality. Whenever you miss me, bury it in the soil. Once it sprouts and blooms, that's when I'll be coming to bring you home. He gripped the pouch so hard his fingertips trembled, then leaned down to press a scorching kiss to my forehead. Deal. I'll wait for it to bloom, and I'll be waiting for you. Stay safe at the manor, don't worry about me. Just take care of yourself and your vegetable patch. He clutched the pouch until his knuckles turned white, then mounted his horse without daring to look back, afraid that if he did, he wouldn't be able to leave at all. As the months dragged on, I tended to the manor's vegetable patch, and kept an eye on the business at Hei's shop, rising before dawn every day to harvest greens and deliver them to the store. Life remained peaceful, yet the longing in my heart grew heavier by the day. Mac, too, would occasionally bring news from the border, saying Shen Yan shared the dried rations I made with the troops, and they all claimed it was leagues better than those rock-hard, bland biscuits. Eating them gave them energy, and even the dizzy spells, along with the skin sores many soldiers suffered from, were slowly healing up. The soldiers joked that once the war ended, they'd definitely visit the capital to walk through the Heian garden and taste the fresh produce and medicinal meals. In his letters, Shen Yan mentioned he'd had planted the sunflower seed on a patch of dirt by the barracks. No matter how exhausted he was after battle, he'd go check on it. Watching the sprout break through the soil and grow, leaves kept him going, hoping for peace so he could return home to help me harvest that field of golden barley. Hearing this made my heart melt, and whenever I had a free moment, I'd sit by the garden beds, chatting with the emerald barley stalks and the new veggie shoots. It became my ultimate source of comfort. My little sprouts, you tell Shen Yan that you all look so juicy and fresh, and when he gets back to harvest the wheat, we're definitely going to have a full barn, ready to be ground into the flour for his favorite wheat cakes. As for these newly planted greens, I water you with well water and fertilize you daily just so you'll grow extra crisp. He always said my stir-fried cabbage was the best, so I saved the prime plot just for him, waiting for him to return and enjoy the harvest. I touched the damp soil in the field, my fingertips brushing against the tender leaves, feeling like Shen Yan can almost feel the moisture too. In this garden, every blade of grass holds my longing. No wind or clouds are needed to carry it. When he sees the sunflowers turning toward the sun in the barracks, he'll surely know I'm here holding down the fort for us. In our home, I'm just waiting for his safe return so we can water the veggies, harvest the crops, and watch the shop lights glow together. The wheat I planted is just starting to head, the green waves rippling in the breeze, right as news arrives that Shen Yan-sen has claimed victory and is coming home. Mac too ran over to deliver the news, face flushed with excitement. Young madam, the heir has won the war. He'll be back in the capital in a few days, and the emperor is personally meeting him at the city gates. Customers in the shop heard the news and stayed to congratulate the heir, all eager to taste the wheat cakes I'm famous for. I sat in the wheat field, my fingers grazing the plump grain heads, feeling sweeter than honey. Those long days spent tending the fields while waiting for him, the endless longing, is finally about to land. But I wasn't allowed to stay happy for long. The gossip from the streets started crawling into the marquis's residence. At the victory banquet, Princess Enlac set her sights on Shen Yan, and right there and then, she begged the emperor to decree a royal marriage, claiming that a war hero deserves a noble wife. She whispered that a country girl doesn't have the status for high society, and running a shop is just plain embarrassing. As soon as that talk got out, the rumors on the street went into overdrive. The servants in the residence stopped acting so respectful and started whispering behind my back. Princess Enlac is an imperial favorite, with a high-status family and a reputation for being stunning. A decree like that? Yeah, that's going to be impossible to dodge. Even if the young madam is hard-working and talented at farming and business, at the end of the day, she's still just a country bumpkin. How could she ever compare to a princess's status? No one dares to say it out loud, but we're all thinking it. If the emperor forces the marriage, the heir is going to have a hard time saying no. But honestly, the shop only makes money because of the young madam. If things change, it'd be such a waste of the garden and the business. They lowered their voices when they spoke and still bowed when they saw me, but I saw right through their side-eye and hesitation. The Marchioness herself is spiraling with worry, and whenever she talks to me, it's all about tradition and saving face. Hinting that she's terrified, I'm about to be crushed by the weight of the throne. In the end, she just sighed, it's been rough on you, just hold on until Yanner returns. Your shop being such a huge success is great for the reputation of our noble house. He clearly has his own plans. I didn't care about the gossip, just kept hitting the farm to check the books like a boss, doing what needed to be done. In the letter Shen Yan sent from the frontier, he wrote, His peaceful days are exactly what I'm fighting to protect. He said he'd protect me, and I'm down bad, so I believe him. The anxiety and the haters chattering don't count for anything. That day I was busy hauling a bucket of feed for my fat, happy pigs in the sty. Suddenly, I heard a racket at the gate. I turned around and saw a bunch of servants in flashy outfits surrounding some girl who was strutting in. She was dripping in gold-threaded fabric and pearls, looking absolutely full of herself, and the second she stepped inside, she plugged her nose, wrinkling it in disgust. Why does this estate smell like dirt? And it's mixed with the stench of pig crap. Absolutely filthy. Without even asking, I knew this was the infamous Anla princess. She sauntered up to me, acting all high and mighty, her eyes screaming, I'm better than you. So you're that basic countrified ahe? Honestly, you're just as tacky and earthy as they said. Shenyan Gege is a war hero now. A man of such status, you don't deserve him. Be smart and just sign the divorce papers voluntarily. And I might even grant you enough coin to shut down that pathetic little shop and live a quiet peasant life. I was mid-pour with a ladle of pig slop, so I just nodded seriously and pointed at my pigs happily chowing down. The princess is right, pig manure does smell, but once it's composted it feeds the soil, growing fragrant wheat and raising healthy plump pigs. And when you braise that pork, the smell is heaven. The signature braised pork at my shop comes from these exact pigs, and it sells out every single day. This smell, this earthiness, it's the taste of a real life, and I honestly don't find it gross at all. The princess froze, clearly shook that I wasn't intimidated, and her face went beet red. You absolute peasant, you're impossible to talk to. How could Shenyan Gege ever look at a commoner like you? Well, he already didn't he? I stood up straight and brushed the dust off my hands. I know how to farm, I know how to make rations. I can grow his favorite cabbage, and keep this home grounded for him. Can the princess do that? The princess was shaking with rage, and about to snap when she heard familiar footsteps at the gate. I looked up and saw Shenyan had returned. He hadn't even changed out of his armor, still covered in dust and grit, but his eyes locked onto me, ignoring everyone else in this pigsty. His world was just me. The princess was ecstatic, ready to run up to him, but Shenyan coldly sidestepped her. He strode over, wiped a smear of dirt off my cheek, and declared with zero room for debate. If His Majesty insists on this marriage, I must decline. My wife is a woman of the earth, pure of heart, honest and hard-working. The mud in this residence and this garden are her treasures, and she is mine. I have no room for anyone else, especially not some high and mighty royal who looks down on honest labor. Hearing him call me a shrew, I was stunned. I tugged his sleeve, curious. Shenyan, am I really a shrew? I don't start fights, I don't bully people, and I manage our shop perfectly fine. He looked down, his eyes glowing, and pressed a scorching kiss to my forehead, his voice practically melting with affection. You aren't a shrew. You're the person I'd lay my life down to protect. Without you, there is no me, and definitely no home to come back to. The princess stood there, her face shifting from pale to green, shot me one last toxic glare, and scurried off with her servants in defeat. The onlookers who were waiting for me to flop were now completely silenced. I looked at Shenyan's weathered face and touched his armor. It was cold, still carrying the chill of the frontier. You're hungry, right? I slow-cooked pork for you and steamed some wheat buns, all your favorites. Shenyan grabbed my hand, smiling so hard his eyes crinkled. Coming home to a meal made by Ahi is better than any royal banquet. Days passed like the vegetables in our garden, season after season, and before I knew it, a few years flew by and I gave birth to twins. Our son, Shenzhe, was named after the 5 grains, carrying the grounded spirit of the earth. Our daughter, Shenwan, was named for the lushness of nature, just like the strong saw sprouts in our garden. And just like our flourishing little produce shop, my 2 little ones definitely didn't inherit Shen Yan's scholar aesthetic. If anything, they're just like me. Ever since they were tiny, they loved getting their hands dirty in the veggie patch, carrying their little shovels to help me till the dirt, and chasing crickets all over the place. Plus, they're always running to the shop to help serve veggies to the customers. So the staff jokes that they're basically the little store managers. Shen Yan went out of his way to set up a private study for them, but the kids weren't exactly feeling it at first. So he didn't force them. He'd just hang out while we were digging, casually dropping wisdom like sow 1 grain of rice in spring and reap 10,000 in autumn. Or he'd point to a crooked sprout and say, look, this one grew sideways. It needs to be straightened out, just like people. Slowly, they actually started spending a solid half hour in the study before running back to the fields to get busy, finally getting the vibe of agricultural work, but never losing the discipline of their studies. The old Marquis Manor has completely transformed into the most unique spot in the capital. The front yard has that stiff formal government vibe, but the backyard is all cottagecore aesthetic with fruit and flowers. Outside the shop, the streets are always packed with carriages and crowds, because my homegrown veggies, my signature pickles, and my medicinal meals aren't just being snatched up by the palace staff. Even the royals and high-ranking nobles are pulling strings just to get their hands on them. Business is thriving, and we've even expanded to a new branch of selling dried goods and herbal kits. Our bank account is looking real healthy, but what matters more is the cozy, lived-in energy of our home. The sound of the kids laughing, the geese honking, and the way Shen Yan's footsteps at sunset mingle with the scent of dinner, it's pure healing. Later on, when Shen Yan became chief counselor, he was so busy with court politics he barely had a second to breathe. Yet everyone in the capital knew this big-shot official had one non-negotiable habit. The second he got off work, he'd change into simple rough linens, either heading straight to the backyard to help me out, or swinging by the shop to lend a hand. His tilling game is actually elite now. Between the watering and the fertilizing, he handles the chores better than Mosey ever did. Helping out with the shop's ledgers and packing orders, he's like a legit store clerk, totally shedding that intimidating chief counselor aura. Sometimes Shen Zhe and Shen Wan would drag him into a cricket-catching contest, and he'd genuinely have the time of his life playing with them. The rigid, imperial intensity he usually reserves for the court is completely gone. All that's left is pure, unadulterated tenderness in his eyes. I'm still my usual self, squatting by the field edges, staring at the sky, watching the clouds drift, and soaking in the sun hitting the lush vegetable rows. That afternoon, I had just finished weeding the strawberry patch, sitting on a tiny wooden stool, just zoning out, when familiar footsteps suddenly echoed behind me, and a pair of warm hands wrapped gently around me. His chin resting right in the curve of my shoulder, carrying that faint, signature scent of calligraphy ink. "Hey, what are you looking at again?" His voice was soft, laced with that end-of-the-day fatigue, but dripping with absolute adoration. I pointed at a chubby, glowing golden cloud drifting by. "Do you think that cloud looks exactly like the braised pork belly we had yesterday? It's so round and glistening with oil, it actually looks delicious." He let out a low chuckle, the vibration against my chest feeling incredibly warm and grounding. "It really, truly does. Let's braise some pork with those pickled veggies you made tonight, Zoe." Zier and Wanner can scarf down 2 extra bowls of rice. Not far off, Zier was chasing Wanner, giggling uncontrollably while waving a cricket he'd just caught. The flock of white geese waddled in a line by the vegetable patch, honking occasionally. The breeze swept through the garden, carrying the sweet, fresh scent of strawberries and the earthy aroma of the soil. I leaned back into Shen Yan, my heart feeling so full it was practically overflowing. Back in the day, I was just the village idiot everyone mocked, constantly looking up at the sky, just hoping to avoid the next bullying session. But now I have land to farm and a partner to cherish. I have precious children, and a man who will protect me for a lifetime, plus a thriving garden shop that keeps my soul at peace. The country girl who was once the punchline of the unhinged capital has finally leveled up into the woman she always wanted to be. I'm not some high-ranking princess, not some elite chief minister's wife. I'm just Shen Yan's he, the woman who tends her garden, watches her family smile, and lives for these simple, blissful days. Peaceful years don't need to be dramatic, just having a sky to watch, a person to lean on, a garden to tend, and a home to keep. That is honestly the ultimate main character.